Okay, so thank you for being here. Thanks for staying after a long day, and there's still a lot of interesting content coming. So I'm Kris, and I work in, I do communications for the Common Stack. And so I'm going to do my presentation in English. Originally, my language is Dutch, Flemish, mais j'habite à Bruxelles, donc je parle aussi le français. Donc si vous avez des questions à la fin, n'hésitez pas de les poser en français. So I'll be able to respond them possibly in English, because I'm just very much used to talking about blockchain technology in English and not at all in French. So let's dive right into it. So my first question is actually like, who knows here what the commons are? So les communs in French. Who knows what the commons are? Can I see some hands? So difficult, like, yeah, quite some people. But so still, I'll give a short definition here because it's always useful. I looked it up myself what the official definition is, but so the commons is everything that are like the cultural and natural resources that are not privately owned by anyone. So we benefit all from them, but they're not owned. They're not owned by the government or by a company. They are just the public good for everyone. And so there's a lot of types of public goods of commons that exist in the world. So these are some of the main types that are most of the time actually discussed and used. And so the first one is environmental commons. So that's like the one that is very known. So like you have the rivers and the seas and so on. Commons often do not stop at borders, they just continue, so which also means that it's very difficult for someone to take charge and to make sure that these commons are taken care of. A second one is everything that has to do with culture, so the cultural commons, art, music, all these things. Then you have digital commons, so the most well-known example is probably Wikipedia. It's also a common good. A lot of people are just like volunteering to bring all this information together and updating it, and it's all available for free, which is beautiful. Linux is another example of a digital commons. Then you have urban commons. I took a picture of just where we are right now at Playground. I actually don't know if it's privately owned. I do think it is, but it's a beautiful example of a place where people come together and there are a set of rules. There are some rules that you respect, and people come together and they bring art, they bring music, they bring conferences here, and this is what happens in the context of urban commons. And then as a last one, you have knowledge commons. So this entire festival is a perfect example of a knowledge commons. All these people who are here, the volunteers who made this possible, and all the presenters, they just come, and you guys as well, you all come together to just like share knowledge, to get to know each other, and to exchange information. So these are all public goods, not owned by anyone. These are the commons, and this is what we're going to focus on today. So I wanted to explain my story by giving a little example. I thought like, well, let's go for the urban commons. So I came to Paris a few days ago. I drove into the city with the Flixbus, and this is the first thing I saw. I saw Paris, the thing in front of me, and then I saw a whole lot of garbage everywhere. And these other pictures were just some pictures I took from going from this conference, from my hotel to the conference and back, because I haven't really done a lot of other things. And you know, Paris is dirty. Paris is really dirty at times. And this is, so if you're a proud Parisian, I'm really sorry. It's not meant as an insult. I come from Brussels, and I can tell you it's way worse in Brussels. Brussels is extremely dirty. And personally, it annoys me sometimes because it makes no sense to me. We pay taxes, we have all these institutions and systems to clean up the things, we all have the technology in our pocket, and why is this still happening? Why is this not more easily cleaned up and maintained? Why does this happen in the first place, you know? Why don't we take better care of our urban commons? And that's the thing that we're wondering, that we've been wondering about, and that we see that there are a number of reasons, and that's because that the systems that are in place, well, they're not always up to date. So who should be taking care of this? First of all, well, it's the government. So we have outdated government systems. So our current democratic systems haven't really been updated since the 19th century, and so there's a lot of abuse, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of systems that are not really functioning the way they should, and they also end at the borders, you know. But the asset commons don't end at the borders. We also have a technology that has evolved really fast, and our democracy, our systems have not at all. They're very rigid, they're very difficult to change. And that is an issue, and we see this all the time. And because we are so connected, and because we have all this technology and all these possibilities, the frustration has only grown. That we want to do something about this, but why can't we? That is something that we've been struggling with. And so you have the governments on the one hand, you have, on the other side, you have for-profit organizations, you have just companies. And companies, well, they don't care either. If you think about the commons, for example, you have the rivers, you have the air. Well, actually, it's almost their duty to pollute, to make things not better, in the sense that they want to create maximum value for the shareholders. Sometimes also for their customers, but most of all for the shareholders. But they definitely do not care about the common good and the bigger picture. That is not what companies are there for. So who does care? Well, it's just you and me. It's us. It's individuals. And sometimes these individuals come together. They form organizations, they form non-profits, and they try to make a change. But it's hugely frustrating because it's unsustainable, and that's the issue that we're dealing with, and that's what I want to talk about today. So you see that for-profits, it's really easy for them. They just rely on self-interest. So you have these systems that just work. People pay, they get their goods, there is a profit that is made, and they're gonna try to create more and more value, again, always for the shareholders, unfortunately. So they're going to extract value out of the system. And what happens in nonprofits, it's actually the opposite there. There you have a lot of people who want to bring value in the system. They create value, but they're not properly rewarded for this. And that is, of course, a big issue. And that is the issue that, how we call it, is that incentives are misaligned. So many people want to do good and they create a lot of value, but they are not rewarded for this value. So they're overworked, they give everything they can, and then sometimes they just say, well, I'm out of this because I need to pay for my living, I need to make a living, I need to survive in this world. And it's often very much the same people who have their heart in the right place, who want to make a difference. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And talking of which, that's why I put this little logo here again. If you see like an event as this, it's completely free. It's beautiful. It's a commons organization doing it. So I wanted to take just this little moment to thank all the volunteers who have made this possible, especially Phil and Antoine. So let's give them a little applause for doing this. Because this is beautiful, and we need to support this. I want to come here again next year. I want to see this, or maybe even in a few months. So like, let's make this a regular event, because this is beautiful to see all these people coming together and sharing information. So that's our mission. That's the mission of the Commons Stack. What we want to do is we want to create literally a stack of cultural and technical components that we give to the commons. So talking about this, I said the commons is the public good, but the commons, if I use it in this presentation, it's also a term that we use to talk about any of these organizations, these community that like get together around a specific cause. So these communities are commons as well. So what we now want to do for them with our organization is that we want to create circular, purpose-driven economies around any cause you can imagine that wants to make a change in the world. So what does this mean actually now? We've talked about the commons and what the commons are, and we've talked a lot about everything and anything that's blockchain and peer-to-peer in the past few days, and we see that these systems are actually circular, purpose-driven economies. So you have Bitcoin, you have Ethereum, you have a lot of others that I mentioned here with a little bit of information. They're really interesting to check out. But what links all of these together is that they are digital. They're completely digital. So they're created and they exist in the digital realm. But we have all these issues in the real world, and it's the thing that we get asked a lot. It's like, well, it's all really cool, and your digital money and all, it's great, but like I have these issues right now in my life. How can we change? How can we fix this? These are issues that we have to address. And so what we want to do is bring this technology and these solutions and these circular economic systems that we have been studying in the past few years and working on with all this talent, we want to bring this into the real world. So with a big word, we call this, that we have been building a cyber-physical commons framework. And so that is the thing that we've been working on. This is, by the way, that framework that I just mentioned. But when you bring things in the real world, everything suddenly becomes way more complex. So, and that is a science in itself. If you want to do this right, you have to do the math. And that is the thing that we have been doing. We have a partner, and they're called Block Science. And they have been studying complex systems for years now. Everyone who's, I think in total with the people working there, they have hundreds of years of experience in everything that is complex systems. And they're all engineers. And so that is a thing, that knowledge, we've partnered up with them to use this knowledge. And so when the components that we're going to build with the Commons stack are really based on this. They're based on solid math, and they're based on modeling all of this in simulated environments. Phil mentioned this before, so the CAD system is a system in which you can model everything. Everything is simulated before any single line of code has been written. So that's the way how we want to bring this into the real world. So the real world is going to be this layer, the top layer. So that's any commons initiative you can think of. For example, to clean up the streets of Paris, that's a perfect example. And for anyone who wants to then start using this, it's just going to be an out-of-the-box solution. But everything under it, you will in the future not see. It will all be modeled and simulated with this tech that has been developed by Block Science called CAD. And out of this, we will be building these 4 components that you see listed there. And we will constantly, by collaborating with the different commons that are using our technology, we will be iterating and optimizing the tech that we are building. So talking about now what we are building, the components that we are building, we're going to build 4 components. And this is based, again, on commons research. So Elinor Ostrom is a Nobel Prize winner who has written a lot about the commons. If you haven't read the 8 design principles by Elinor Ostrom, it's really worth the read. And so by looking at those, we have thought and checked what are the elements that you need to build a really successful, working, self-sustaining commons. And so we came to 4 challenges that needed to be addressed, and we are building 4 components to address those. So the first element is the incentive layer. So as I mentioned before, it's also the thing I'm going to focus most on during this presentation. You have all these people who come together and who are doing good work, but how can you reward them? How can you make sure that they stay in the system and that they stay motivated? So this is an incentive layer that we're building with sustainable funding. So I'll go into this component a little bit more in a second. The second thing is if you come together as a group, you have to make good decisions, and that is a very big challenge. You bring a lot of people from various backgrounds together, and how can you do good voting? So there's a lot of experimentation going on in the blockchain world for sure with this, and in the real world as well. And we want to take the best of both worlds, and we have developed a system where you can make continuous decisions, where you can do good governance, and that's the second element that we're building. The third, or it depends how I'm just going down and now up, but it doesn't matter. The third element that we're building is an accountability layer. So if you want to make decisions, of course you have something that you need to make decisions on, and these are the proposals that are brought to the group. And when, for example, going back to the example of cleaning up the streets of Paris, you have to make sure that when you give money to a specific thing that is going to be done, you have to make sure that that money is wisely spent and that the people who are paid to do it are actually doing it. So this you do with an accountability layer. The fourth element is just as important and is also really crucial in the studies done by Ostrom, is that you have to analyze everything and you have to make sure that that when there is abuse, that you eradicate it from your system. And so this is an analytics layer that we're building in there, and in this way we can continually upgrade and optimize this system. And so when we've built these four components, then we will have what we call a minimum viable commons. So that is our goal. These are the components that we want to build over the next years. One more thing about the common stack, the stack that we are building. You've heard a lot over the past few days, and you will hear more about all the solutions, all the things that are being built. We see the solutions that we're building, the governance tool, the funding tools, and so on, as being part of this ecosystem. So very important to us is that we work on interoperability. So we're not just going to focus on just one blockchain. We're not going to focus on saying like, our solution is perfect and you should just use this. The idea is that it works together with other solutions that are already out there and on which a lot of research has been done. So now to go back to this incentive layer. So you want to reward people, but how do you start this? So we do this with the augmented bonding curve. So another question is, who knows here what bonding curves are? 5, 6, 7, a few people. Okay, so I'll give a very brief explanation and the developers can correct me afterwards if I'm making big mistakes. I'm not a developer. But a bonding curve, in short, is actually an automated market maker. What does that mean? So it's literally a curve that you can model and simulate, which we will be doing, as I mentioned. And what normally happens when you create an economy, you have to create your tokens, and then you have to make sure that everyone buys your tokens. So you have to create a lot of hype, which has happened in the past, I think, for the people who know about ICOs. So a lot of coins have been sold. Some more valuable, others are a little bit less valuable right now. But so the cool thing about bonding curves is that it is an automated system. It's just a smart contract, and it issues the tokens. So you can actually, it creates your tokens. If you want to buy tokens, well, the smart contract will create the tokens for you. And if you want to sell your tokens, you actually sell it to the smart contract who burns the tokens again for you. So this is actually super valuable for small communities. So if you want to bootstrap your community, you want to start a commons, and you want to start small, this is super cool because you can just use a bonding curve to kick it off and to create this new economy. And so what we're going to do is create not just a bonding curve, we're building an augmented bonding curve. So that's how we're calling it, because it has a number of specific elements to it. So the first thing is that it starts with the community. The community is super important in everything that we do. The cultural aspects, I mentioned this a little bit before, but this is actually a very important cultural element. You need a trusted community. We call this the trusted seed. And the trusted seed is a community of individuals who truly believe in this cause. So for example, if you want to clean up the streets of Paris, it's because we want to get the people who are really frustrated, who really believe in this, and who say, okay, we're going to build a system that keeps Paris clean for the next 100 years. So let's build something solid. I'm in here for the long term. So those are the people you need. And so that's the same thing that we see with other successful systems. We see it with Bitcoin, we see it with Ethereum. Those people didn't just start it, then took the money and ran. No, they are in it for the long run. It didn't work out so well with some of the other coins, and that's because some people just created a hype. Then when the coin was really high, they went away. And that's the thing that we want to avoid. We want to create something with a trusted community, with people who trust each other and who are in it for the long term. So this community will then start this economy. So we call this the hatching of the augmented bonding curve. So how this works is actually, this is a big community crowdfund that you do. You will you will do a big crowdfund, and you will normally also be one of those people who say, okay, I'm gonna do a big donation to this cause because I believe in it, and you get really cheap tokens for this. So that's a cool thing that you get, and the thing is, what happens with those funds that you collect or that you give yourself, a big part of it, a big chunk, for example, let's say 70%, just get locked. So those tokens will get vested. They can be vested over time. It can be vested based on some of your actions, so that can also all be programmed in. And about 30%, for example, is used to really get to the goals of what you want to do with your commons. So, for example, cleaning up the streets of Paris. So this is the funding pool and the collateral pool. So this is the thing that you start in the beginning. You get your money in, and this helps in the sense that your tokens are locked. So this is a risk you're taking. You don't know yet exactly when they're going to be unlocked, but this shows also that you put skin in the game, that you believe that this is important and that you want to be a part of this. And then we get the open phase. That's when the augmented bonding curve is launched. And then we use a lot of economic mechanisms that we have studied in the blockchain world that work and that we have programmed into the bonding curve. So the cool thing here is that when you use economic mechanisms, you get something that often does not happen in regular nonprofits. In regular nonprofits, and I know because I've worked in them, you have a lot of people who want to do a lot of different things, and they're very enthusiastic about it. They start with something, but then they abandon the project, or they're like, oh, now I'm going to focus on this because this is cool too. But you want some focus, and you want some coordination between the people. And this goes a little bit better if you actually reward the people. And that's what we want to do by bringing these economic mechanisms in there. When people do good, you also reward them. And this incentivizes people, and this creates actually a sort of a coordination machine. People really start to coordinate because they see, well, if I do this, I get rewarded. And this you can get rewarded in many different ways. So I'm not going to go into all of the mechanisms, but I will be sharing the presentation afterwards, and it has some links into how the augmented bonding curve works exactly. But one of the economic mechanisms, except for the tokens that are locked in the beginning, another mechanism that helps to create a continuous funding mechanism is that when you actually are able to sell your tokens and they are burned, you pay a sort of tax. We call this the exit tribute. And so this tax goes back into the funding pool and again funds some of the initiatives that are supported by this commons. So this is another way that makes this a regenerative mechanism, and that's really what we want to do with the commons stack. We want to create microeconomies around all sorts of causes that you believe in. And so how you can see the bonding curve and this thing that we're creating here, it is really a sort of layer between existing economic mechanism, like the selling and buying of the tokens, and an ecosystem that really is going forward and is very coordinated in one way. But so it's important also to mention here that this is not a magic money making machine. This is we heard it before in the DAO talk that Bitcoin is magic money. Well, I do believe there is some magic in the world, but this is not it. This is really based on science, but it's not going to just make money come out of the air. This community will have to work for it, and if it doesn't, it might fail or it might not work, and then you might lose some money. But is it really losing it if it's for a good cause? Then you can just consider it as being a regular donation. And that's how you can see it. But if it becomes a success, if you're able to grow your community and attract more people and grow your economy, then you can make a lasting change. You can make a real change in the world. And that is the goal of all these things that we want to create with the common stack. So if you want to play a little bit with this yourself, as I said before, everything has been modeled already for the augmented bonding curve in the CAD module. And just This is a little simulation tool that makes it a little bit more tangible and that shows how this could work. So you can set all your parameters in the beginning of what your token price should be, how much you pay for your exit tribute, and so on, how long the tokens, or in what way the tokens are locked. And then you can see a simulation of what this augmented bonding curve would look like. So if you want to try this yourself, you can try it out on our website, commonstack.org/abc. And then, yeah, so to almost get to the end, I wanted to mention that we have a fantastic team to build this. So anyone who is working in the Ethereum space probably knows Griff Green. He's a little bit of a legend. He's one of the people who started the DAO. So that's been mentioned here a few times. So he's one of the starters of the DAO. And he's also a great hugger. So if you met him, then you know that he's a really big hugger. That's how I met him. And then we have Michael Zargam, who is the founder and the CEO of Block Science. And this is the engineer who designed all of the math, and he's also a fantastic person. And we have also a great team of advisors. So Simon de la Rouvière, I just wanted to mention here because he's actually the inventor of bonding curves, and he is an advisor on our team. We also have, like you see, the people here with the only people with the ties in the pictures. So these are our lawyers. When tokens are involved, you need lawyers. That's just how the world runs. And we want to make sure when you launch your own commons that you are really protected, that everything that you're really helped, and that's why we have a strong legal team for this as well. And so if you want to learn more about this, you can read about it on our Medium. You can read on our website. If you want to just ask our questions, you can join our Telegram chat via commonstack.org/community. And then I wanted to end with this slide. So just when I arrived here today, I saw the big demonstrations happening next door, and the thing that people most mentioned to me, yeah, there's the strike happening in Paris. So, you know, people are frustrated right now for many, many reasons. And as I mentioned before, we now all have our phone in our pocket. We're very connected. We know everything that's going on. So this adds to the frustration. And that is the thing that frustrates me as well. We have all this technology within our reach. We are now able to make a change, and with blockchain technology, we can take it to the next level. We can really have an impact. We shouldn't just be demonstrating in the streets. We should actually be pushing, like turning the buttons and making that difference. And so that is what we want to do together with you guys, with the Common Stack. Thank you.